We do record our talks, and if you want to listen to some of our previous talks, this is the first one for this year, but we have talks recorded from the last few years on our website, SenecaCreekWP.org. For example, there's a great talk on stream monitoring. If you haven't done that and want to know what is done when we monitor the stream, Kevin Misner did a great talk on that. It's recorded. Bonnie Bell has done several very interesting talks on the animals of Seneca Creek. I did what I think is a pretty good talk on the everything you might want to know about Lower Seneca Creek. So check that out on our webpage. And then I wanted to also mention that upcoming events for March for Seneca Creek Watershed Partners, we have 2 trash pickups. Information details on all this will be available on Facebook and again at our website, SenecaCreekWP.org. But we have a trash pickup on Sunday, March 5th at the Diamond Farm Park area. And then we have another one on Saturday, March 18th at the area known as Big Bend, which is just upstream from Riley's Lock. It's a place where a lot of people fish and picnic, so there tends to be a lot of trash in that area. And then at some point, the last few weeks of March, we do our native tree giveaway. I've ordered 450 bare root native trees. It's weather dependent, so I never know the date until I get a contact from the state DNR. And then I go that day, pick up the trees and distribute them. But it's usually the 3rd or 4th week of March. We give them away for free, and each household can take up to 10. They tend to be small, a mix of small trees, large trees. Of course, they're all small when you get them because they're just young saplings, but if they're planted right away, success rate is very high. They grow healthy, and in 5 years, you'll have a much better tree than if you bought it from a nursery growing in a pot. Okay, so that gives us, I think, the basic announcements I wanted to do. I'd like to turn the remainder of the time over to Ken Bawer and say thank you to him. He has volunteered to give us this presentation on stream restorations. It's a topic he's done a lot of research on, and he will take questions at the end of the presentation. All right, Ken, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay. Yeah, if you have a really burning question, that's fine. You can interrupt me, but I usually answer most of the questions by the time I get to the end. But so anyway, I want to say Debbie Sarabia is on. Hi, Debbie. Debbie, I think we probably have a wide range of background that people have. So this is going to be kind of starting from the bottom, just so everyone kind of comes up and understands the background of these stream restorations. So let me start out by saying my name is Ken Bawer, and thanks very much for your time. So a little bit about my background. I give these presentations strictly as a concerned citizen. I'm retired. I don't work for anybody. No one's paying me for this, and all my current activities are strictly as an unpaid volunteer. I'm on the board of the West Montgomery County Citizens Association. I'm a past president. I'm a current volunteer member of I was a volunteer member, but I was appointed by County Executive Elrich to the Montgomery County Water Quality Advisory Group. I'm a past volunteer board member of the Maryland Native Plant Society. I am a co-founder of the Watts Branch Watershed Alliance, and I'm a longtime volunteer for Montgomery Parks as a weed warrior, and in fact, as a group supervisor for removing non-native invasive plants. And for what it's worth, I was also certified as a Maryland Master Naturalist through the University of Maryland program. But just to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of those organizations today. So I have 3 different alternate titles for this presentation. One of them is Stream Restorations, The Inconvenient Truth, with apologies to Al Gore. The other is Crimes Against Nature, which are harsh words, but I think you'll agree with me by the end of this presentation. And then finally, I sometimes call it the greenwashing of stream restorations. And greenwashing is defined as the process of conveying a false impression or providing misleading information about how a product or practices are environmentally sound. And this is historically what the oil industries and the tobacco industries have done. I like to tell people that because this is a misleading name, a stream restoration, and that's why I put it in quotes. It's understandable that many people misunderstand this subject and support so-called stream restorations without really knowing the full truth. Because after all, with a name like stream restoration, what could possibly be bad, right? There's a reason why the $1 billion, and it is a $1 billion stream restoration industry, doesn't call them engineered drainage ditches, which would be more accurate, but it just doesn't sound as good, right? So here's a quote from Noam Chomsky. He says, quote, "That's the whole point of good propaganda. You want to create a slogan that nobody's going to be against, and everybody's going to be for. Nobody knows what it means because it doesn't mean anything," unquote. That's really the root of this stream restoration, the name stream restoration. So this is a photo, the background photo of a so-called stream restoration project in Alexandria. And I'm going to be, you'll be learning why I always put restoration in quotes. Okay, that's all I had to say on this one. So let me just start out with a part of a video. Debbie may have already seen this, but I'm guessing the rest of you probably have not. This was a stream restoration in Gaithersburg. It's the Solitaire Creek stream restoration. So hopefully you'll be able to turn up my volume, be able to hear this.
This is the aftermath of a City of Gaithersburg stream restoration project. This stream, once known as Long Draft Run, was once a lush, heavily wooded, healthy stream corridor. It included 100-year-old tulip poplar trees.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. It's a nice little video, but the rest of it pretty much shows a nice wooded area that was then at least partially destroyed. So sorry if that was a little too loud. It's kind of jarring to me, but it kind of gives you the full impact of what's going on. These are the things I want to talk about. What is a stream restoration? Why are they done? And in combination with that, what are the regulatory drivers? What I call the inconvenient truth, showing you what the collateral damage is. I think you already kind of got the idea, unfortunately. Some pictures of the failures, the blowouts, I call them. Just a tiny bit about the science of stream restoration biology. I'll talk about the non-destructive alternatives, a little bit about the costs and Montgomery specifics, and then end up with what you can do. So starting out, what is a stream restoration? First of all, as I've told you, that the term stream restoration it's a misnomer, and a better term would be stream engineering, but that's the term we're kind of stuck with that everyone uses. Stream restorations are construction projects, pure and simple, and there are several different types of stream restorations, but for the most part, if I can generalize, they're engineering projects done to try, and I emphasize try, to stabilize eroding streams, which would, if successful, keep sediment out of the Chesapeake Bay. These projects, they all use heavy equipment, such as this is called an excavator, and these are used to modify stream channels. So they typically involve a mix and match of straightening or changing a stream's natural meander pattern, placing heavy boulders to armor plate sections of the stream, as shown here, scraping away stream bank soil using plastic or other types of soil stabilization mats, as shown here, dumping fill material into the stream to raise the channel bed, cutting a stream valley and then, or rather clear cutting a stream valley and then possibly removing tons of soil to lower the stream valley closer to the stream, or even filling a stream channel and moving it to a completely different location. And I have examples of all these. This background picture is a so-called stream restoration in one of our Montgomery parks, if you can believe it. And it just shows one example that shows the total destruction caused by these projects. So this huge tractor is sitting where the stream used to be, and I'll tell you what happens to these streams a little bit later on. I've got some pictures. So there are several different types of stream restorations, and just to save time, and we can come back if you have detailed questions, but suffice to say, all these different types of stream restorations have one thing in common, and that is they all use heavy equipment that destroys natural areas. And for the sake of completeness, and Debbie had emailed me about this earlier, I will point out that these are not stream restorations as defined by our state Maryland Department of the Environment, at least as far as getting MS4 permit credits. So on the left is an open culvert or a culvertized stream, and on the right is a buried stream in a pipe. So Debbie had asked me, well, why don't they, or do they give credits for uncovering, or the term they use is daylighting, these buried streams? And the answer is no, they don't. And then that kind of begs the question, well, why don't they? And I thought about it for a while, and it seems like that Maryland Department of the Environment could be convinced potentially to allow daylighting and deculvertizing these products for MS4 permit credits, depending on how the project's done. And there's a lot of detail behind that. But suffice to say, right now, these projects are not recognized as stream restoration projects for crediting purposes. So the next question is, why are stream restorations done? Or to put it a different way, what's the problem that needs to be fixed? So one problem is that there are excess nutrients that flow into the bay, excess nutrients and sediments that flow into the bay. So this photo shows this one problem that these stream restorations are at least partially meant to address, which is shown by the brown plume of sediment that's entering the Chesapeake Bay from its various tributaries. So that's the problem. That's the problem for the bay itself, not necessarily for the site at which the stream restoration is done. So, sorry if you all know this, but just as a refresher, so this sediment that gets into the bay, it decreases the amount of light that's available for aquatic plants. It buries habitat for aquatic organisms, and along with the sediment comes excess nitrogen and phosphorus, which are fertilizers, which leads to the algal blooms that you hear about. When these blooms, they die, they create dead zones with little oxygen. And this is what causes these massive fish die-outs that you hear about. So this is the problem of eroded soil and the nutrients they contain, that it enters the bay, and it's what stream restorations are supposed to fix, at least partially. But as you'll learn, we really don't need stream restorations to fix this problem. And as you'll learn, stream restorations in the meantime destroy our local natural areas, even though it's what they're doing is meant to help Chesapeake Bay. Another problem is construction that damages streams. These can be buildings, they can be roads, or maybe even a tennis court. And unfortunately, these projects they're continually getting permits from the state, from our Maryland Department of the Environment, and from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to put these buildings or roads on top of things like intermittent streams. So that's why the guy is saying, dude, where's my stream? So this all really begs the question, why are these projects being permitted in the first place? And I believe it's, the answer is follow the money. These developers have deep pockets, and I'm not saying anyone's doing anything illegal, but they're influential. They're contributing to campaigns of legislators, and I'm not saying anything's done illegal, but there's a lot of money floating around this stuff. So, just to be clear, I'm in no way opposed to what I call infrastructure protection or repair projects, such as protecting undercut roads or exposed sewer lines, such as is shown here. These are necessary, as I call them, infrastructure repair projects, but they're not stream restoration projects. And if you do a project like this, you don't get any credit as a MS for the MS for an MS4 permit or as a mitigation project that I'll talk about. It's just to kind of protect what needs to be protected. So I gave you examples of the problems that stream restorations are meant to address. And when you do a stream restoration, there are regulations that must be followed. So it's, you know, which comes first really depends. Sometimes you want to do a stream restoration, which means you have to follow the regulations. But on the other hand, it's kind of the reverse. Sometimes the regulations force you to do a stream restoration, such as for an individual construction project. So I'm not going to spend any time on this, but I'll just suffice to say there are regulatory drivers, and I'm going to give you. I'll talk about a couple of them in some more detail. So I'm going to go over to the next one. The primary reason stream restorations are done are by jurisdictions, I should say, like Montgomery County, is to help meet their MS4 permits. So this top part is a screenshot from Maryland Department of the Environment website, and it talks about the MS4 permit. The MS4 stands for a municipal separate storm sewer system. It has 4 S's and hence the abbreviation MS4. An MS4 permit is required for jurisdictions that have separate pipes for stormwater than for their sewer system. So think of it as it's called a permit. Think of it as a permit to pollute up to a certain level. And the MS4 permit system is an effort to clean up the Chesapeake Bay by reducing the amount of basically 3 pollutants, as they're called. And the main ones are sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus that enter the bay from point sources. And the pollutants, as they're called, come from uncontrolled stormwater that runs off impervious surfaces like roads, as shown in the bottom left, and the point sources in these cases are the stormwater pipes that fire hose stormwater into streams, like I show on the right. So jurisdictions like Montgomery County, I will tell you, sell these projects to the public with, if not the promise, but the strong implication that they will improve the environment, which is not supported by the science or even by casual observations, as I will show you. And so you might be scratching your heads thinking, well, you know, where some of us live out in the western part of the county, you know, we don't have storm drains and storm pipes. So I'll tell you that the whole county is not covered by the MS4 permit process. It's mainly in the urbanized or suburbanized areas that do have, you know, the typical cement street curbs and storm sewer systems that have pipes that kind of direct the water into the streams. So, for example, where I live, we do not have that, and I live kind of near, well, closer to the city of Rockville, but west of I-270. So, a second regulatory reason stream restorations are done is to help the state meet EPA limits. And they use the term TMDLs or total maximum daily loads. So EPA limits on pollution runoff from things like agricultural land that gets into the bay. And so these are called non-urban stream restorations if a stream restoration is done in a more rural areas. So this is just an example of a stormwater runoff from farmland. So one of the regulatory reasons stream restorations are done are from so-called mitigation projects. There's a federal regulation that's called the Federal Mitigation Rule for short. MDE has a state regulation that's spelled out in the Code of Maryland Regulations, or COMAR. So a project that impacts or damages the waters of the United States has to get a permit from both the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Maryland Department of the Environment. So what this means is that an environmentally destructive construction project can destroy streams or wetlands in one location. In this example, building at site A on the left done by company A, and then company A can supposedly mitigate that damage by paying another company, company B, as shown on the right, to do an environmentally destructive stream restoration project in a completely different location. And I would argue whether it needs it or not. So this whole system it's pretty morally corrupt. It's adding insult to injury, and I would say two rights don't make a wrong. And the result of this is it's not a zero-sum game. The result is not a balancing, if you will, which is meant to be, but the result is a net decrease in wildlife habitat in our environment. So, not to put too fine a point on it, but these so-called mitigations are based on the false premise that bulldozers and chainsaws can actually restore streams at location B, which really can't be done and doesn't need to be done. So it's really a big lie, and I'll show you all the photographic evidence that I've collected and the scientific evidence to
Ken, in that map there that you were just showing, what does the yellow and the red mean?
Well, I shouldn't have used this maps. I didn't really need it to make my point. I'll tell you, but my point was just that you can do a project at one location, and then the mitigation project can be done at a completely different location. So since you ask, it has to do with the water quality of watersheds in the county, and I believe that green is like the highest quality, and then yellow is worse than that. Well, actually, the blue is probably the best, and then it goes green, then yellow, and then red. So you can, as you might expect, the worst quality watersheds are further down county. So that's I didn't mean to indicate that, but that's what it means. Does that answer your question there? I'm guessing. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. So the inconvenient truth is that contrary to the propaganda and frankly the greenwashing by the multi-billion-dollar stream restoration industry, and frankly our government here in Montgomery County, is that these stream restorations don't actually restore anything, and not the streams themselves, either physically or biologically, and especially not when you look at the health of the entire construction site, which is always clear cut way beyond the stream itself, as you can see in this example. And this is a so-called stream restoration in Chevy Chase. This is now they call it Nature Forward, exclamation point. It's formerly Audubon Natural Society. This is part of the project that was done south of Jones Bridge Road. And for those of you who have not seen this area used to be fully wooded. And my rhetorical question is, how are the fish and the other aquatic organisms, other creatures supposed to cross over these rock dams and move up and down the so-called restored stream? And as you can see, the streamside forest community was totally wiped out. Another inconvenient truth is that stream restorations don't fix the root cause of excessive stream bank erosion, and therefore any in-stream work will simply be blown out by later, and are being blown out, destroyed by later future storms. So the root cause of stream bank erosion is the uncontrolled stormwater that comes from impervious surfaces in our developed areas like roads and roofs that's then fire hosed into our streams through stormwater pipes like the one on the left, and from agricultural lands like the one like on the right. And stream restorations do nothing. They do nothing to keep this excessive stormwater volume out of the streams. And so I make the point that if you armor plate the stream in one location, the problem of this excessive stormwater volume is just forced further downstream. It's kind of a out of sight, out of mind mentality, and it's especially problematic if your stormwater flows downstream into a different jurisdiction. It's not really fair, is it? So I'm going to show you several more examples. I'm going to flip through them pretty quickly because I have a lot of slides, but I can go back if you like. But I'm just going to show you some examples of so-called stream restorations, just to show you how they're destroying our natural areas. This is a pretty high elevation view of a stream restoration at Ashbury Methodist Village in Montgomery County. It's in the wintertime. You can kind of get a scale of the project from this stream down in the bottom right that I've circled. You can barely see it, but you can see the shadow. And this is what our state and our county, allows to be called. Well, for this example, I'll say it's our state allows it to be called a stream restoration. I'm not sure how much, if it's on private property, the county doesn't have quite as much influence over whether it can be done. This is another example of just the utter destruction caused by a so-called stream restoration. This is in the city of Rockville. This is in the Upper Watts Branch, and this from this site, it flows down into our Watts Branch, and which is closer to me, west of I-270. So you can see that the riparian, as they call it, or stream side forest buffer, has been completely destroyed and scraped down to bare soil. So what happens to the stream during these construction projects? Well, this is another example of this is an example of what they do. This is the Falls Reach stream restoration project. This is in Potomac, closer to me. The entire stream was forced to run through this black pipe during construction. And so my rhetorical question is, well, how hot do you think that water gets? And how do the frogs and the turtles and the other animals access the water? Well, the answer is they don't, and it gets worse, as I'll explain in a little bit. This is the Whetstone Run project in Bloom Park in Gaithersburg. Before picture on the left, after on the right, and again, total destruction of the forest. And you can see the type of heavy equipment that's used down at the bottom. On the right, it shows you that the engineers dug a completely new stream channel to make it look like this. I mean, they completely moved the stream around with heavy machinery. The stream never had this kind of meander pattern or sinuosity, as they call it, that was created by the heavy equipment. And this is an example of what the industry apparently means when they promise that, quote, the stream canopy is replanted and restored. I mean, that's what they say. And the red arrows point to some of the little saplings of these so-called restored tree canopy. Good as new, right? So referring to another stream restoration, someone wrote, this is a guy who lives in Virginia. He said, quote, "So now we have little twigs and wire cages in place of the hundreds of glorious hardwood trees." So sad quote. I use this is just another example to prove to some, if there are any naysayers, and I do get naysayers in my presentations, but to prove that there were in fact some nice sized trees at the Whetstone Run project. So this is really interesting. These slides will show you how they or prove to you that they completely move the stream, and it's all done in the name of making money. So this is a comparison of where the original stream was, and this was from a USGS site, and I traced out the stream in green, at least the biggest parts of it. This is the location of the newly engineered stream, more recent from overhead picture from Google Maps, and I traced this one in red, and then I overlaid those two, and I was able to pretty accurately line those things up. And so again, the red is the original, the green is the new location, and they just excavated out a whole new stream channel, and they had to fill in the old channel. And you can bet they didn't move. They couldn't move. The frogs, the turtles, the other little critters. And what was the purpose of doing this? It was all to make money. And the more they engineer the stream, the longer the project is, and the more money they make. And I'm shaking my head. It's just hard to believe it's legal, and our laws need to be changed. And you'll have I'll tell you a little bit more about a bill that's in front of our legislature now, and you have a chance to write in and express your opinion to support it, hopefully. So the point is, this has not restored any stream. They just restored anything. They just created an engineered drainage ditch. So let me click through some others a little more quickly. Example, this is in stream restoration up in Columbia, Maryland. And this was a huge project. So these are all different locations in Columbia. And well, I don't mean to repeat myself. This is also in Columbia. I mean, they just destroyed both sides. They dumped riprap on the sides to kind of trying to armor plate it. Again, in Columbia. So now back closer to home, this is the Solitaire Court stream restoration in Columbia. On the left, standing at, and these are stills that are from the same project as the video that I showed you. So standing at this location, you couldn't see that house in the back before the construction. I mean, none of the houses were visible, and it was a pretty narrow strip, but it was a nice little strip of forest. On the right, you can see that the former forest is now a giant pile of logs. And this little Pinocchio has a quote from a guy in the stream restoration industry. And he says, quote, "The most current practices are actively avoiding tree removals." This was done by a guy. He was a ringer. He found out about one of my presentations, and he put this in the chat. and he's sitting through my presentation, and he has the guts, the gall to put this quote in as I'm showing these pictures. So here's another view of the Solitaire Court project, and the arrows they're pointing to all the little rock dams that they made by dumping rocks into the stream, and these just totally block the fish and all the other aquatic organisms from moving up and down the stream. And they've, again, like I said, they've destroyed the stream canopy. These man-made pools, they're going to heat up in the summertime, and they're probably going to boil whatever was alive that they didn't already kill. And it also, I just kind of realized this was a good example. I just as I was going through this today, that you can see the plastic fence that they have to keep people out. Well, it shows you that they haven't protected the critical root zone of all these trees along the side, and so they've got this heavy equipment running up and down here. All these trees are going to die on both sides. I mean, that's what happens when you run these heavy, 10,000 or more pound equipment on top of the root zones. So this is another example looking back up towards where we were before, and I kind of use this one also to show about the critical root zone. And I kind of point out laughingly that they were so concerned about the heavy equipment scraping up against these trees. They kind of protect these. They put these wood protectors. Well, if a tractor is going to get that close to a tree, it's on top of all the roots, and all these puppies are going to die. It's really disgusting. So so clearly these companies are run by engineers, not ecologists or tree care specialists. And I don't have anything against. I got a degree from a college of engineering, and engineers are great, but they need to stick to building roads and buildings, right? Not destroying our streams. This is a so-called stream restoration, and I have examples from various counties around the state to show that it's not just Montgomery County. This is a so-called stream restoration in Baltimore County. This is called Scotts Level Branch. Their website says that they're in their environmental protection agency says they're concerned about providing essential habitat and providing vegetative buffers for streams. And so the question is, well, so why are they destroying what they already have? This is Orwellian doublespeak. So the industry folks cry all the time, and they cry all the way to the bank. They say, well, it's not fair to show all this construction mud and the mess. And they say, once the projects are finished, they look real nice. My response to that criticism is, well, what these projects look like when they're done is really not so important. After all, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? What is important is how much environmental damage these projects do, not what they look like when they're done. And so you need to see the construction mess, because that shows you how much damage they're doing. So I already showed you Whetstone Run and Solitaire Court, and those actually were for the industry folks. They say these are projects that were finished. So what are you complaining about? So here's another example of a project in its finished state. This is another view of the stream restoration in Chevy Chase at the Audubon Natural Society, now called Nature Forward. And again, this was upstream from Jones Branch Road. This was a fully wooded area, and on the left shows again some of the equipment that they used. I took all these pictures, and it shows the plastic sheeting they put down. And the right, again, there's just no way that the aquatic creatures can move up and down this so-called restored stream. But the stream restoration industry, they're never happy. They say, well, yeah, it looks bad, so why don't you have pictures, after we plant stuff? So okay, here you go. Here's if they planted grass, here it is. It looks great, right? But the point is, the aquatic organisms still can't get over those dams, and you need to see all this mess, because it just shows people who have never seen this stuff how much damage is really being done. This is St. Charles Parkway restoration in Charles County. On the left, this was a fine-looking stream valley that was clear-cut, and then on the right, there's the forest as a pile of logs. Again, St. Charles Parkway. Then they're calling this a restored stream, but again, it's pretty hard to call it anything other than an engineered stormwater drainage ditch. This is Mayberry Stream Restoration in Carroll County. They did about a mile of Bawer Branch at a cost of, to their taxpayers, at about $2 million. This was completed in the spring of 2022, and they just ran the bulldozers right through the forest. This is a different point. It talks about the impact of non-native plants. This illustrates what happens to these projects. On the left, I showed you this picture before, Winkler Run. And this is a picture taken by Rod Simmons, who's the natural resources manager for the city of Alexandria, of later on. Well, actually, it's 5 years later in that same area. And so Rod says, this is a slide from Rod's presentation. He says, stream construction projects are major vectors for the growth and spread of non-native invasive plants to completely engulf plants following major soil disturbance. So another aspect of both industry and frankly government greenwashing is they never talk about, I call it the collateral damage, the wildflowers and the animals destroyed. And so I'll take a look at just a tiny fraction of what we're talking about. And this is just an example of some of the collateral damage that doesn't get never gets talked about. And these are all native Maryland wildflowers and small animals. I call them charismatic mini fauna. And there's no way these guys can outrun the bulldozers. And these were all taken on my property. I'm closer to Wooten High School, and I'll just point out. Well, there's upper left. There's a toad. There's a box turtle, a gray tree frog. Bottom right, wood frog, and then various kinds of wildflowers. And this one here on the left that I'm pointing to, that's a baby. That's the one first year newly hatched baby box turtle. Shocked the heck out of me because I've only seen like 2 of those in my life, that small, about the size of a quarter. And those guys live in stream valleys for the first, I think it's about 5 years of their life. And then they kind of tend to venture more away from the streams themselves. But those guys are all just toast.
Ken, can I just add a comment here, which is a lot of times people say, oh, we're just like tree huggers and only focus on the trees. And the trees, are obviously so important to the ecology of a stream valley, but all of these other small plants are so important, and they are just basically scraped away. And as an example, I don't see here a mayapple, but since you have a picture of the box turtle eats the mayapple fruit. The plant itself is pretty inconspicuous. It only grows about 8 to 10 inches tall. But it takes 17 years for that little plant to grow to maturity to bear fruit. And about 100 years to have a nice large clump, which at Solitaire Court, there were multiple clumps of mayapple that were providing food for the turtles that would have been living there. So when they take out the 100-plus-year-old trees, they're also destroying these colonies, which even though the plants themselves may be small, they cannot be replaced by dropping seed. And it only take, a tremendous amount of time, 100 years in this case, to get a good sized colony back in that same spot.
And that's
I think a lot of times people just don't even realize the complexity of the environment that's being destroyed and the plants that are there. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a very good point. I appreciate that. And frankly, our county is as guilty as anybody for misleading the public. And they say, don't you worry, they come back in and they replant stuff and basically it's good as new. And
you were told at Solitaire Court that in 2 to 3 years you wouldn't even be able to tell this had been done, which was amazing to hear them say.
And I went to the on-site pre-construction walkthrough, and the Solitaire Court, she was higher than the project manager. She was the program manager. So she was over all their stream restorations. And I innocently said, oh, what happens to all the frogs and the toads and the snakes and the salamanders? She said, oh, they just move away and come back when the construction's done. And they actually posted that on their frequently asked questions on their website. It's still there. It's like, really? When they go to Ocean City and then they come back when it's all done? It's unbelievable.
I have a comment on this. I have to say, for the Solitaire Court project, Seneca Creek Watershed Partners and myself and many people, we did try to engage the city of Gaithersburg, and we pushed back really hard on that project. Unfortunately, I think we came in kind of late, and the city is, not really flexible. And they did a lot of this greenwashing and poo-pooing.
Yep.
We tried to emphasize the ecology, and they just kept coming back to saying you're just tree huggers, you're just tree huggers.
Right.
We held a plant rescue.
Right.
There was no, I mean, a lot of people came in and very good-heartedly, they took some of that germplasm and ancient germplasm and planted it in their own yard. But there's no way we could, you can't replace that.
No.
And the really egregious thing about, one of the many egregious things about that particular project is their very own consultant said that the riparian is healthy. From the aerial photos, I could tell that it was close to 100 years old. You could go back pretty far and you see this. They've pushed back on the aerial photo evidence. They were so fixated on having this project, they pushed back on every single argument.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah.
I want to say that in the future, it's important for us to keep our ear to the ground and get in early. When you find out that there is something even being talked about, then get in early. Try to get them to change the plan. I mean, those plans for Bloem Park and Solitaire Court were years old, and they weren't going to change those. They just said, we did it, paid for it. So what? It's outdated. So what? They were total clear cuts.
Yep.
And that's going to segue to the other thing I want to say is that we need to keep heads up about so-called mitigation banks.
Oh, yeah.
There is a proposed 5-mile bank in Colombia, and it is
I've been working on that.
yeah, it's you can help me then explain. I think they are sort of like speculative restorations. We're in a company.
Debbie, they all are speculative.
Yeah, it's like a financial company. It could be a bank. It could be in one of the Columbia projects. It's a bank in Ohio. You know, they buy the land, or they buy the. How's it work? They buy the.
Well, so I'll tell you. Well,
Rights.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. If you can, it's what it is it's, and you can explain how they will do a restoration, and then they will sell those credits to other developers and so-called restoration companies.
Well, let me give you,
That are
so let me
working
just give a
elsewhere.
let me give a generic example. Let me first say that I appreciate your comments, Debbie. I spent, just on the Columbia project alone, hundreds of hours, and I spent dozens of hours, working on the, protesting and writing letters and door knockers about the Solitaire Court and the project and the Bloem Park, but none of us have enough time to spend as these projects come up. We've got to cut the head off the monster, and that is, we've got to change the laws. And so I'll tell you at the end, and we'll get, if you don't, we'll get you links to, there's a bill that's out that it's not perfect, but it's a good start to try to put some rails on these, because we got to change the laws. No one has enough time to fight these.
Yeah.
And we're just going to they just blow us off. But so in a nutshell, the mitigation project, I'll just give an example. Someone like in Colombia, I'll make up the numbers just for illustrative purposes. Up in Colombia, this company is going to restore, let's say, 10 miles of a stream. And then what happens is I decide to put up a building, and I destroy a mile of a stream. So I then go to this company and say, hey, look, can I pay you for 1 mile of your 10 miles that you've done to mitigate the building that I've done? So that's how the mitigation projects, the guy that's done the 10 miles, that's how they make their money back. And it's all legal and it's state sanctioned, but it's morally and ethically corrupt. But anyway, all right, shall we go on?
Ken, is that the Elkhorn by chance?
Well, that's, yeah, Lake Elkhorn, that's
Elkhorn,
the,
okay, yeah.
and there are other ones go around. Yeah, Debbie, if you need all the gory details, I can get that to you, or anyone else. Okay, so fish, you should see fish now. So we talked about the, you know, the charismatic, you know, microfauna. What about the fish? So this is just a subset of the fish in Maryland. These are actually, these are the fish that are in Montgomery County. At least I don't know if it's all of them, but even if they survive all the construction, and that's a big if, as I'll explain on the next slide. As I said, it's impossible to move over these rock dams, at least on, you know, for some of the projects. So this is back to the Falls Reach project, and so like a lot of these projects, the water gets pumped through pipes like this, so they can get in and work in a dry stream. So let me just read you a quote. It's from the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture handbook called the Stream Restoration Design Manual. And they say, quote, they say, aquatic life would either be prevented from passing the project, like by those dams, like you saw, or pulverized by the pumps, unquote. So they say aquatic life pulverized by the pumps. It reminds me of the Bass-O-Matic commercial in Saturday Night Live from years ago. But so we're talking about, I mean, not just fish, but the frogs, the crayfish, northern water snakes, baby snapping turtles, spotted turtles, anything that might be, you know, slithering, you know, in the stream. It's going to be like a wearing blender. So obviously, stream restorations cut forests, and I'm pretty sure this crowd knows that cutting forests promotes global warming. I like to say we point a finger at Brazil for cutting their rainforest, but we're doing the exact same thing right here. In Maryland, over 1 million feet of stream, that's about 215 miles of streams, have been destroyed from 2014 through 2021. That's from our Maryland Department of the Environment website. The undisputed science of climate change tells us that cutting forests contributes to global warming, since those trees that have been cut can no longer absorb carbon, or rather carbon dioxide, and that's called carbon sequestration. And there's a whole list of additional lost ecosystem services, as they call them, that the industry and frankly our county, the county governments never talk about, and they're never even considered when these forest areas are destroyed. And you know, our government really is schizophrenic. On the one hand, they say, well, we've got to fight global warming. We're going to plant all these trees. We need to save forests with conservation easements. We got to use solar. We got to use electric cars. And yet, on the other hand, they not only allow, but they actually encourage the forest to be cut down in our natural areas with these MS4 permits. And it's even worse than it's hard to believe. It's even worse than that. Our Montgomery County DEP, they actually asked for, and they were granted by the planning board, a waiver on a conservation easement for the they call it the Grosvenor, I can pronounce it, Grosvenor Lux Manor stream restoration, which is along Tuckerman Road near the Strathmore Music Center. I don't think they've broken ground on it yet. So it's like our government they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. At one of my presentations, an industry spokesman, one of these people that was that happened to appear, they talked about, they said, well, the stream restorations, they're designed for long-term stability, and they throw out these gratuitous engineering doublespeak. And they said the alignments and structures balance flow velocities and shears for long-term stability. This one guy said. So my question is, well, then why do the stream restoration companies only guarantee their work for 1 year? And that's what they do. That's evidently the industry standard. I've talked to a number of different jurisdictions. So my question is, so much for long-term stability, you know. So I say, well, is it possible they're lying through their teeth? And so these next photographs show you why these projects, why they are only guaranteed for a year. And they further, I would, as an aside, they further, would address an industry complaint that I need to show post-construction photos. So these are all post-construction photos for the industry folks. So since stream is not being controlled at its source, the stream restorations, they fail, and others will fail if they haven't already, especially given the more intense rainstorms we can expect due to global warming. So All the rocks, the boulders, the filter, the soil stabilization mats, all brought into these projects, they'll all eventually get blown out by future storms. And so what do I mean by a blowout? Well, a blowout, as I term it, simply means the disruption of the armor plating and the stream bank engineering that's caused by these large rainstorms. And it really, the result is that renders them really, for whatever their original purpose, it renders them really useless, and it's just a waste of taxpayers' money, aside from the destruction of the environment. So this is Joseph's Branch Stream Restoration in Kensington. On the left is a little bit different location than the one in the middle, but it just shows you how these large boulders are getting literally pushed out of the way by the uncontrolled stormwater. And the one in the middle, the ones I circled, those I estimate those are about 300 pounds each, based on some boulders that I had brought into my property. And these are all being dislodged by, believe it or not, by the stormwater. And so the photo on the right is the exact, literally almost the exact same location as the one on the left. And I came back and I took it during a rainstorm to show you, they do a stream restoration, but they don't control the stormwater. So this is what happens. This is the Cabin Branch Stream Restoration in Bethesda. This is near Montgomery Mall, kind of near between Tuckerman and Democracy. And again, it shows how the uncontrolled stormwater has just eroded out the stream bank behind this armor plating, and it renders all this work completely useless. This is a blown out armor. This shows blown out armor plating along Long Branch in Tacoma Park, and you can see the huge size of these boulders compared to the people standing up at the top. I went out with these people to look at this stuff, and the large boulder on the bottom left, that's probably about 5,000 pounds, believe it or not. This is one of I think the only other picture I have from Fairfax is where I grew up. This is Little Pimmet Run in Fairfax, so they've got they're doing the same thing over there. This is Snake Den Branch in Potomac, Maryland, kind of near, I can't remember the name of the shopping center. Anyway, so the bank on the right, you can see the blown out areas. The water has gone up over this rock wall, excuse me, and it's continued to erode out behind the wall. And then you can see, if you can see my little arrow over here, it's exposed this black plastic geotextile fabric. And now that it's exposed to sunlight, the UV rays are just going to break it down, and it's going to add to our microplastics problem, as if these things don't have enough of a problem. This is in Gaithersburg. This is an unnamed tributary to Great Seneca Creek. Again, the rock structures have been disrupted, exposing the black plastic. And you can see all the erosion back behind it.
And you also see the Japanese stilt grass.
Yeah, that's not the worst of it. This area has the worst infestation of so what's the other one?
Wavy basket grass.
Yeah, wavy leaf. Thank you, wavy leaf basket grass. It took me a half an hour to pick off all using. I happened to have a roll of duct tape back in my car to pick off all the seeds. But I didn't want to go, but I wanted to get a picture in here. So speaking of mitigation, this is one of the proposed mitigation sites for the I-270 expansion if it ever happens. So this is nowhere near where the road widening would happen, right? Okay, this is Lower Booze Creek in Potomac. Yeah.
I'm sorry, real quick. What was that tributary? Where's that tributary or the mitigation site?
Well, it's I'm looking at my notes. I didn't write down here exactly where it is. I can get that to you if you email me.
Oh, okay. Wait, it's coming back to me. I think I have the document. Thanks.
There were two sites they mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of my other slides, I think I actually have it on another slide.
Okay, we'll get it later. Thanks.
Yeah. And I can get a copy of this. It might take a while to, for the group. Okay, this is Lower Booze Creek stream restoration. This is Potomac off River Road inside the Beltway. So here's some factoids. The original project cost $700,000, And of course, this was all fully wooded. And so here's a quote from Montgomery County DEP. Quote, storm damage occurred very soon after construction, initiating structural failure, unquote. Great, there goes our tax money. So the photo on the left shows the damage to the original stream restoration, at least at one site. And the photo on the right was probably not the same site because they don't tell exactly where this photo was taken. But it's after the repair work was done. So maybe it could probably be called a so-called stream restoration of a so-called stream restoration. Anyway, this cost an additional $3.6 million. It's a total waste of money. It's like throwing our money in the trash can, hence the little cartoons there. And so since all these companies only guarantee their stream restorations for a year, when they're destroyed after a year, guess who picks up the bill? We do. So here are just some more pictures of these blowouts. It's from a document from the Chesapeake Bay Program's expert panel report that on the one hand promotes stream restorations, yet acknowledges that they all fail. They don't say they all fail, but that they do fail. So these photos are, what was I going to say about this? Oh yeah, so these photos are from a study, and what they did was they took a small area where the stormwater that would normally drain into the stream was completely controlled by out of the stream practices that I'll show you pictures of, like rain gardens and permeable pavement, things like that. And they said, well, what now that you've controlled the stormwater for the most part, what happens to the eroded stream banks? And so the picture on the left is the before, and then 4 years later on the right, and you can see what they call the self-recovery or self-stabilization of the bank happens naturally as the soil slowly sloughs off. And when as it slowly sloughs off, that slope becomes a little more gentle, and it's pointed to by the arrow on the left, and the vegetation starts to come back, and you can supplement it with native plantings. But the stream restoration industry hates this study, and they even pretend it doesn't exist because this is a stream fix that, guess what, it costs $0. They can't make any money from it. And Montgomery County knows about this. They apparently ignore it as well. So here's for future reference. Here's the actual link to the reference that what was I going to say about this? Oh, well, so even our county, they say, I've heard our DEP says, well, these problems are urgent. We got to stem the bleeding. We got to put out the fire. It's like, no, these problems were caused over hundreds of years. Yeah, it was accelerated probably the last 50 years by our urbanization. But there's no urgent reason that we got to go in and fix these eroded these eroded banks ASAP, as they would like us to believe. It's a problem, but it's not an urgent problem. And I guess that's all I was going to say about that. So what does the scientific literature say about the effect of stream restorations on the stream biology? So the literature, and I'll show you the references the next page. The literature says that the results of stream restoration rarely, if ever, show evidence for biological improvement for the aquatic organisms. And this is what they would call biological uplift, an improvement of the in-stream biology. So as part of their greenwashing campaign, the stream restoration companies and the jurisdictions, including Montgomery County, they talk about the ecological restoration benefits, and it's just not borne out by the science. These pictures are just a few examples of the aquatic organisms that they measure. Example, there's a stonefly in the middle of a black fly larva, and just one picture of one of the types of fish, a black-nosed dace. So during a stream restoration webinar that I not mine, but a webinar that I listened to, the industry guy from a major stream restoration company, he admitted flat out that stream restorations are not resulting in biological uplift. And this is what he said. His proposed solution. He said, well, we should continue doing stream restorations and just maybe we need to lower our expectations. It's like, what? I mean, I don't know. I almost laughed. I was on mute. I did laugh out loud, but that's great. So if you're losing, just declare victory and go to the bank, as I might add, which is where these stream restoration guys go. So these are all the references that I found that talk about, kind of back up what I said. And many of these are from the University of Maryland, like Robert Hildebrand, Sujay Kashal, and Margaret Palmer. The conclusion that hopefully you will reach or have reached, given what I presented, is that the stream restoration emperor has no close. That is, one, stream restorations really don't restore streams, and two, that stream restorations are in fact devastating to both the stream itself and the local environment where they're done. So let's talk about if I'm saying don't do stream restorations, what do we do about all this, about the streams that are eroding? And so now I want to talk about the non-destructive alternatives to stream restorations for controlling stormwater. So
can I ask you, Ken, I have one question that's weighing on me. At the beginning, I thought I heard you say that this was being done because of silt building up in the Chesapeake Bay. And it seems like from what they're doing, there'd be more silt from all this water rushing down. And I haven't heard you say anything about the Chesapeake Bay. Has the bay improved because of this, or?
No. Well, first of all, you've probably seen like the latest reports that, I don't know, what's the bay now, it's still a D- or something. That's kind of the joke, is that no, the bay has not been improving, and we're spending tens of millions of dollars. And the reason I'm not talking about the bay now is because these MS4 permits, the reason why EPA requires them to be done is to improve the bay. But meanwhile, these activities we're basically sacrificing our local areas, as I say, on the altar of trying to improve the bay, right? I mean, it's like it's a bizarro world. So that's number one. Number two, I think your question was, it's supposed to be keeping the silt out of the bay. Well, yes, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be keeping silt out of the bay. And so what they do is they do things like this. They dump the armor plate these walls. And so, yeah, from, the instantaneous minute after they finish the project, yeah, it does stop the erosion. But then the next big storm that comes along, this is the kind of thing that happens, right? These get overrun or erodes out behind it. Same thing, they put all this riprap. So that's what they say they're doing, right? But in reality, the projects are all getting destroyed. So something doesn't add up, right?
Yeah. So my other question is, I sort of have the impression, I don't really know a lot about this, but that our council has some really smart people on it, and that there's some good people in the Montgomery County government. And how can everybody just be getting the wool pulled over their eyes like this?
Well, yeah, and I'll add to it, we have some very smart and nice people at Department of Environmental Protection. I don't know whether they believe this baloney, or what. No one. I understand people like to protect their jobs, right? It'd be nice if someone pulled me aside and said, from DEP that said, Ken, I know this stuff is baloney, but I'm afraid to say anything because I don't want to lose my job. I mean, I can understand that, but so far no one's ever said that to me in confidence, which I wouldn't break. The council, I've presented this to every single county council member and or their staff before the last election. So the new people haven't seen this. Without exception, they're either the county council members themselves, and I think the ones I actually presented to were Craig Rice and Gabe Albernaz. I think those are the only two council members themselves. The rest were their staffers. everyone is kind of appalled by this stuff. However, no one has taken the ball and run with it, right? No one's done anything about it. I give the presentation to Mark Elrich, actually to his staff, and they all seem to be appalled by it, but yet it hasn't gotten any traction with Mark. I've spoken to Mark about this on a couple of occasions, face to face. He seems to be only concerned about the price, and I think Mark, he's real. I like Mark a lot. I mean, he really is great. This is one area where we just disagree. We just disagree on it. He seems to be only concentrating on the price. And he's taken his lead from DEP, and DEP's line is, oh, the upland projects, the rain gardens and the bioretentions, too expensive, can't do it, no can do. So
so I'm horrified, but also the Audubon property there, how did they get duped?
I don't have words for that. I had them in my I'm no longer upping my membership, and I had them in my will, and I took that because I took them out of my will. I don't get it. I do not get it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, this is really unbelievable, and I thought we were getting a talk about stream restoration. I didn't know what it was going to be about. And well, no, but I mean, like what it's for and how great it is. Like, I had no idea it was going to be like this. And what did Mary Kay say that was, well, you said they were following the money, but she said something else. Oh, sometimes I wonder, like, do you ever get threatened?
I thought about, I've thought about watching my back. I will tell you, no, I have not. But a woman who's working on the Lake Elkhorn project we talked about, the mitigation bank, she was threatened. She put it was opinion piece that got in the Baltimore Sun, and she got a cease and desist letter from the lawyer of the stream restoration company and said, if you don't request a retraction, we're going to sue you. And she does not have deep pockets, so she wrote to the company and asked them to withdraw it, but I think it's still online. The digital version I think is still online. But yeah, these guys play hard. They play hardball. They lie through their teeth, and and
what Mary Kay said, they call us tree huggers, and that just dismisses us, and that's that.
Yeah, NIMBYs. So, okay, so good. Feel free to interrupt again. I mean, they're good comments. Appreciate that. So this is all just kind of reiterating. This is the source of the problem, right? Up in our where our roads and roofs are. And stream restorations do nothing to control this volume before it gets into the streams. And then just to show it again, the same picture, that there's also a problem with agricultural runoff. So I'm getting to the alternatives to stream restorations, and for MS4 permits, there's a document, they call it for short the accounting guidance document, and this document has a list of all the alternative non-destructive practices that can be done outside of the stream itself that can be used to meet the MS4 permit, and probably and possibly to meet for mitigation projects as well. It's a little more complex than that for mitigation projects, but let me show you what the projects are. And I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm just showing this to make the point. There's a whole list of non-destructive projects to do out of the stream, but the only destructive one, which I call the nuclear option, is this one right here. It's the stream restoration line item. And so another table, just continuing the list of alternative non-destructive projects. Everybody knows what they are. And Montgomery County does a lot of them. They know how to do them. When they do them, they're really good, but they're just not doing enough. So here are just a few examples of what they actually look like. And these are the non-destructive alternatives to stream restoration, which we need to be doing, that control the stormwater before it enters the stream, and it removes or at least decreases the root cause of stream restoration, or rather stream erosion, in the urban and suburban areas. And the co-benefit is that most of these practices help to recharge the groundwater via soil infiltration that increases the stream base flow, as it's called, the normal level of the stream when it's not raining. So in the upper left is what's called a bioretention. And what they do is the arrow is pointing to a cement curb. And what they do is they put a cut in the curb, and the stormwater runs down the road, and it gets diverted into this nice planted depression where the stormwater soaks into the soil. And next to that on the right, it's called a grass swale. It's pretty much the same thing without the plants. I don't know when they decide to put in plants and when they don't. Permeable paving is in the lower left. To the right of that they call that conservation landscaping, and you get credit for converting lawns to spongy conservation landscaping areas. Green roofs on the top right, and then the tree plantings, which can be done along streams and agricultural land, as well as in urban and suburban areas. So the added benefit of these out of stream or upland stormwater control projects is that they don't destroy natural areas. They typically take place in areas that are already pretty much destroyed, frankly. So this is a nice example of a bioretention. This is the universities at Shady Grove, Montgomery County, off Shady Grove Road. This bioretention takes water from the roofs and the parking lots, and they're actually really beautiful. And like I said, practices like these are done. They're done in already disturbed areas like parking lots and road rights of ways. So now we're getting down to the cost issue. So some governments, like Montgomery County and the industry folks, everyone's saying that stream restorations have to be done because they're cheaper, and that these upland practices that I just showed you examples of, we can do a few, but they're just too expensive. And they say that well, Montgomery County would say in other jurisdictions they're forced to do stream restorations because they get more MS4 permit credits from Maryland Department of the Environment. But however, there's some, I'm scratching my head about a lot of this stuff because what they say just doesn't match my research. I was looking at the Maryland Department, MDE, Maryland Department of the Environment. They have data that shows that there are at least 25 types of these upland projects that are cheaper than stream restoration. So I don't know. I've got an email into a guy that I know at MDE asking for him to comment on this. But having said that, even if stream restorations were more expensive, for sake of argument, we still need to tell our elected representatives that our few remaining natural areas are priceless, even if they aren't in pristine condition, and that saving our natural areas outweighs saving any amount of money, as this graphic, the cartoon, is meant to suggest. And the critical point is, well, I should say the next point I want to make is that when the industry and our local governments tell us that stream restorations are cheaper, which I don't think is actually true, or at least I'm not convinced it's actually true. They're only talking about the purchase price. They're never talking about the life cycle cost, or some people call it the total cost of ownership, or TCO, which is the sum of the purchase price, that is the cost of the construction, plus the maintenance cost, plus the repair costs, plus the replacement costs for catastrophic failures like some of the ones I showed you. And so, by the way, these out-of-stream projects like the bioretentions and the conservation landscapings, those will never have catastrophic failures like the ones I showed you of the stream restoration projects that are wiped out. There's not enough water coming in to make that happen. They'll never need to be completely rebuilt like a blown out stream restoration. And then plus they never quantify, they meaning the industry and our government, they never quantify the adverse impacts on what are called the ecosystem services that I showed you a list of. For example, trees that are cut down, and trees are known to lower air conditioning costs. Why? Because they cool the air. And so if they were to do a total cost of ownership comparison, I think it would tip the scales even further in favor of upland practices. So Montgomery County, just to get some specifics to Montgomery County, talking about past stream restorations. So for our previous MS4 permit, which ended in November of 2021, and these things are they're 5-year permits. Our DEP, by which I mean the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection, if I can say it, stream restorations cost about $17.4 million, and they destroyed about 30,000 feet of streams. My estimate is this is equivalent or equates to about 1 million square feet of forest that were destroyed. And it's no surprise, DEP, they will not give us this, they don't publish this data. And it's, I just kind of estimated based on, I took an estimate that the average width of these products was 35 feet wide. Who knows? But so it's probably at least that amount. But they don't want to talk about that, right? Next question is, will more stream restorations be done in Montgomery County? Well, yeah, you bet they will be. DEP's already allocated $21 million for stream restorations for our next MS4 permit, which started in November of 2021. They say they're going to do, and these are estimates, they'll do about 28,000 feet of additional stream restorations in the first year alone. And how do I know this? Because it's all in the Montgomery County Financial Assurance Plan that I'll show you I think I have some slides of that. And then a bit more about the mitigation projects in a minute. We don't really know, how many mitigation projects will be done. So this is the first page of our latest MS4 permit, and I've circled municipal separate storm sewer system discharge permit, and I circled where it says Montgomery County, and I circled where it says starts November 2021. It's valid for 5 years. And so this is Appendix B, and I've highlighted, these are all the planned, shows you that there are at least 8 planned stream restoration projects for the first year of the project. Let's see. And these are just, some of these have actually had already started, actually, but they don't give any specific information on the projects, unfortunately. This is just the just to remind myself or to show people that when they talk about an STRE in the previous slides, that's an abbreviation for a stream restoration. So I just cleared the whole table. This is the only planned mitigation project that I know of. I know again, it depends on what Governor Westmore does, would be this for the I-270 expansion. So someone is asking about where that photo was from. The first one was from this first one up here. And I've got a location. And the second one is, I've got a location if you really want to go out and look at it, or at least link on these, see what they're talking about for the mitigation projects. So, and there's another one, there's one people are talking about doing one in Montgomery Village. There's one, someone called me about one of these stream restorations company out of the blue, called them. They've got an HOA near Olney. And I kind of bent their ear about why they shouldn't let it be done. And there are probably a lot of others that are probably going to be done. So I'm just about done here. So in summary, here are a list of reasons to oppose these projects. One, they don't restore streams either physically or biologically. And this is backed up by both public science and, frankly, our own eyes. Number two, they don't address the root cause of stream restoration, rather stream bank erosion, which is the stormwater that's fire hosing into the streams from the roads and the roofs, et cetera, that I showed you pictures of. Number three, the science tells us that we should be protecting our forested areas since they counteract global warming. We shouldn't be cutting down our forests. And number four, the way to supposedly is to fix the streams is to fix the problem at its source, which is to control the stormwater before it gets into the stream to begin with. So among other things that you guys can all do is you can contact your local officials and ask them to, for legislation to ban or restrict these stream restorations. And this is not a radical idea. We banned DDT, we banned thalidomide, which led to birth defects. We we pretty much banned lead. We banned lead in paint and most gas. There's still some leaded gas that's available for small engines. And so there's no reason why we can't ban or at least restrict stream restorations. And some people say, well, yeah, this is a controversial topic. No, it's not controversial. That's the same tactic that's used by the oil industry, to cast doubt on the overwhelming scientific evidence that global warming is real. It's not a controversial topic. So you can request meetings with your elected officials. I'm certainly willing to help you out if you want me to back you up, or we can put together a presentation. You can create action alerts for this organization, your Seneca Creek Watershed Alliance, or your neighbors, or any other organizations. Write letters to the editor, email environmental groups, all the ones you can think of, because believe it or not all the environmental groups are on board. There's some riverkeeper organizations like the Potomac Riverkeeper. Last time I spoke to Dean Nanjugs, his group, they wouldn't come out against stream restorations. There's some more to it behind that, but they weren't going to call for a ban on or even restrictions on stream restorations. You can call your radios, TV radio stations, ask them to do some segments on this. You can find out about these things for public comments, and I don't expect you to take notes on this, but you can find out about them from Maryland Department of Environment, and this all tells you how to do it. You can get on a mailing list for the Army Corps of Engineers, because they have to permit these projects. And then, so this is the most important part, really, the whole presentation, is that there's a link in the chat, and I can send it to you if you want to email me if you don't have it, and Mary Kay is going to post it to your group's site. But there is now a bill that I helped get introduced. It's not perfect, but it's a good starting point. It's HB 942. It's called the Protection of Maryland Streams and Waterways, and it does some good things. It needs to be tweaked a bit, but it incentivizes these upland stormwater projects. It promotes, if you're going to do a stream restoration, it has some things there that'll make them more effective and protect more of the trees. It enhances the monitoring requirements, and a big thing is that it'll hopefully, although it's short on details, it'll improve the public notification project, because what happens is there's not a big hue and cry from the general public, because people don't find out about these things until they hear about them, or they hear the chainsaws going. So that's all I had, and I'm happy to answer your questions. And
I have one more question. When I saw Glenstone was in there, have you